What is cinema to you?
It's a tough question, and there is no one answer.
Okay.
But it just to me right now, it's medium of expression, and it's a very powerful tool of expression, and that's what I feel it is. It can evoke much more than other things, I feel.
So after you did your FTIA, you did the documentary about the old man with enormous wings, which is, the title is inspired from Gabriel Garcia Marquez shorts, which shows that you're very connected with the readings and the literature works and all. So just share me that how you are connected with the literature works. What are the books you read? What are the inspirations you get it from the reading and books and all?
So the reading influences have been different at different times. Marquez and this particular story, I liked it from a very long time during my FTI days itself. And actually, I wasn't such a big reader, and only like meeting people at the Film Institute and meeting people from different backgrounds was more interest sort of came to reading. And so till now I'm not one of those people who say okay this author or that kind of books, but it's mostly like asking people what they're reading and just if there's a topic of interest. So I read a lot of non-fiction work as well, be it somebody like Noam Chomsky or even Murakami.
Okay.
Murakami is somebody I've liked a lot over the years. And apart from that, I can't really say one thing particularly. Uh, there was a phase when I was reading a lot of Hindi literature
Okay.
because, again, we were trying to write something and that flavor and all that we were trying to get. And also, I'm interested in adapting a lot, adapting stories, plays. Um, it hasn't really come off yet, but it is something which I'm interested in, and I hope that it will come through in, some way sooner than later.
So I came to know that you're working in commercials, documentaries, and also feature. You did the feature films. So
Yeah.
those three are really different kind of content wise. These three are really different. You have to handle different content, different visual things. So how do you manage these three things? Because eBallet was totally different.
I think that's the whole idea of like, because you want to engage with the medium in all its form, and see, it's something which we are still exploring. At least I am, of what I like. And I figured what I like is doing different kind of things with the medium. Going back to your first question of what is cinema, it, that exploration of the medium is a vast ocean. So right now I'm more engaged with what all I can explore before settling down into saying okay, this is what I do, this is what I like. So the documentary, I agree, was very different from what I had done earlier. And there's another documentary I'd done, a short documentary, which was very different from the long documentary I'd done. And now eBaleu and the commercial work that I do, even in advertising sometimes or even in mainstream feature films, is again, it's just this whole idea of what all is possible and what all are people doing. And eventually you will, I guess I will also settle down to do one kind of thing or not. But right now this is the most exciting part, to be able to do different things without sort of putting any kind of blinkers on in your head. See, content wise, your politics wise, your interest wise, those are things which happen in time, okay, and those are formed. But we need to keep exploring, how to express those kind of beliefs that we have in the given formats or given opportunities that we get.
So you were saying expressing the thoughts. In commercials, you can't express your thoughts as in political way or the social issues in commercials. It's different medium. In documentary, it's so different. You have to show the reality alone. And but in the feature film, you have to exaggerate and spice up little things for the story if the content demands. I'm asking how you manage those
Yeah.
things because you might have some philosophy, but you might have some personal thoughts that this is what I want to say, this is what I want to stick into it. But in commercials, it is not possible, right?
See, but you're not always doing everything to say something. It's also exploring the medium.
Okay.
Once you get the articulation, then you can say a lot of things in Ibaleu, or Old Man with Enormous Wings, or even the other documentary. It's also about this. See, with cinema, I feel that we want to say a lot of things, but we lack the articulation that is needed in cinema. So we end up tackling it in a very mass com television kind of a way. So that articulation, I think, comes from being able to do various things and then refining that craft to see what you want to say eventually in your own work.
So when I saw the E Balevu first time, I was reading David Mamet book on directing the film. So I got that this film was made it just like how he says. This is he says that a film need to be made like a documentary view. The uninflected images are the telling story. When you keep the juxtapose in with the uninflected images, it will tell the story. In E Balevu, the script was very tight.
See, in cinema, there's this thing, no, we say ki meaning is created not in individual shots, but when shots are put together. That is the beauty of cinema as well. Like you're creating meaning outside of those individual units. When those units come together, a third meaning is created. So that is a fundamental kind of principle. As far as Ibaleu goes, yes, me and Shubham were involved in writing the script. And once the script was in place, it was also, see, it wasn't a case of, okay, lock the script and do Recce and go shooting. So Recce, research, and scripting were all happening together. So we were spending a lot of time in those areas, following the monkeys, trying to figure out a pattern, and also understand how contractual labor was sort of playing out in that particular job situation. So all those kind of research was going into what we were writing. And when we were writing, some pertinent questions were coming up, which we would go back to the people to ask, or to sort of figure out, okay, how do we want to do this? Because monkeys is one part of the script, but the whole contractual labor situation, the situation at the family, the house with the gun, everything is important. That universe of the film was very important for us. So people, be it the guard or the sister doing contractual, everybody is doing contractual work, and that job insecurity had to be the universe of the world for us. And that's how we sort of progressed. That's how we approached the whole thing. And as far as this documentary like film is going, it's is something like, personally, I feel that it's a little, the debate is a little old, this documentary fiction. Now the medium and the technology is such that we have to keep pushing the boundaries of what is fiction and what is non-fiction work. And within that system, I think Ibaliu as a script gave us that liberty, to explore more, to push the medium in a way that we hadn't done before.
So particularly when we start writing the script, we might have short divisions and everything. But in e-ballet, it's different. When I saw the short, the this sequence where Anjani gets locked in that monkey thing, where all the workers item do that, you can't have that kind of. I mean, you won't be prepared for that kind of things in script writing itself, right? It will be happen in the shot in the. I mean, at the spot or something else in you might have developed in that spot, right? Did you have any short division for the script?
Of course we did. Of course we did. But again, this whole idea of a locked short division or a locked script is something we need to examine ourselves in terms of what we are shooting. When you're shooting with monkeys principally, how do you say this is my short division and this is what I will stick to and I won't explore anything else? And that is the world of the film also. It's so unpredictable, and it can go in any direction. That is the beauty of having an animal like monkey in your film, right? It's unpredictable, it's dangerous, it can go anywhere. So even for things like that cage sequence and all, see, you might not be saying, okay, this shot will be taken on this lens from this distance at this height, but you know what you want to do. You know that I want Anjani to be ragged by these people. You know that I want to constantly have man and monkey interface, and transference between Anjani and and a monkey, because I know where I want to end the film. It will go till that end. So you're constantly exploring how can I push the usual narrative, the usual grammar of filmmaking that we employ. Like, we write a scene, we break it down into shots, then we film it. How do we jumble this up? How do we have more porous interaction between the writing and the filming? That was being constantly explored here.
So what is the role of Subham in this film? Because you mentioned him. Yeah, in story and script, Subham name was written, and in screenplay dialogues, your name and Subham name was there, and he plays executive role and also associate director. So he has a lot of things in this. What is the real
Yeah,
role of Subham? Because in one interview, you mentioned that Subham is the only man who opened the door for this story.
in a sense, yeah. So I had this idea. Okay, this is what we want to do. But Shubham, me and Shubham have worked together for many years now, more than a decade, and we understand each other's work a lot and each other's interests a lot. And in this film, he's sort of the commander in chief, of the crew, where he's the writer. He's also like exploring everything, the universe, the drama. He's helping along with the actors. He's credited as the production designer of the film as well. So it's difficult to say, okay, we did this, and because it was a very small crew and we were all doing a lot of things. But Shubham practically was the sort of a radar for this film, the compass for the film of where the film was headed, in terms of writing, and in terms of the execution, in terms of getting the actors together and getting a whole mise en scène together. It's not just about writing or anything, but even location scouting, or costumes, or production design, or art direction, or the choice of music that will be made, or designing the promotional material, designing the poster of the film. So his contribution is it's difficult to pinpoint what all he did. He's done a lot.
Okay. So we'll come to the screenplay. So you the eBalev have a very crisp and tight script. Okay. So it have a lot of layers where the you talk about migrant people, and you talk about the gun. What if the gun comes or rifle comes into the home, and what all the drama will happen after that? Political issues and the different phase of Delhi, about RSS nationalism, the mob who killed the guy, and all these are connected with the current issue. This is all currently are happening, and Ibale happened in 2019, and it has a lot of layer in it. How you plan to give this tight script and with the different layers in it?
Like, a couple of things. First is this: see, the film is also, I had the idea since 2015.
Yeah.
Okay, but we didn't know what to do with the idea. It's only after spending a lot of times with a lot of things across the country that we figure we got the lens to look at this story. So the universe of the film is about what is happening to India, or what is happening around us, in terms of socio-political, economic kind of a situation. So that worldview was always needed, I feel. Outside of that worldview, the film would just become about an odd job, about a monkey repeller. I didn't want that. I wanted to weave this into a world which makes this job possible. What kind of a world are we living in where this is a government job, you know and this is a contractual job, and we employ exploitative labor to in the most high security areas of Indian democracy. I think it became a very kind of an ironical thing, uh, for the whole thing. And also, satire as a form, it forces you to push more. It forces you to push and poke fun at power and go beyond your own characters and the plot. So that we always had in mind, like, how do we keep pushing this? How do we go beyond the plot and beyond everything? So this whole idea of the kind of world we're living in had to seep into the film. Without that world, the film would not make sense to me, and we took time to do that. But it was a very conscious decision to have the film situated in a world like this.
And when you were writing the script, you want to handle only this way or some other way?
No,
Because you
this way.
might have handled this in a script into a very serious way, very serious movie or something. Why you want to pick this genre, satire humor?
Yeah, I feel like, uh, then that sort of becomes a zone where it becomes didactic, where I am saying I know better than you, and I will tell you. I think that is not. See, the beauty of a satire is that it invites you. It invites the audiences in. It encourages a conversation. It encourages dialogue. It invites participation. If we made it into a very serious or a, that kind of grim social reality film, then by the end of it, it would have been unbearable for me personally. Right now, because we knew where the film is going to end, we have to reach there and reach there in a way where you laugh at the situation but not at the characters. And it's sort of that emotional bhav is much more when you go take that journey. I felt, because I really didn't want to make it into a neo-realistic, film about working class people. It had to be much more. It had to have more life in it. It couldn't have been bleak. That was the whole idea of having color in the film, having music in the film, having laughter in the film. It People had to had life, and what hurts us is that loss of life rather than this idea of a conceptual exploitative system.
So, shooting in a metro city like Delhi will be a very tough thing. What are the camera you have used? How are the lensing were there? How you want to manage and audio things, how did you manage technically?
So we had a camera called Panasonic EVA1, which we used as the main camera for the film. Smaller camera, but very nice, good new camera that Panasonic has come out with. And then we had, for a few sequences, we had even smaller cameras, the Sony A7S2 or the GH5. And for the sound, we had a lot of equipment in the sense of lapel mics, in terms of stereo booms, mono boom, those kind of things, because we knew we did not have the option of dubbing this film. It had to be sync sound, and to record sync sound is such a painful thing in this kind of a situation. So that planning was done in a lot of detail with the sound designer Bigya, who was the recordist and the designer of the film. And also a lot of conversation with Somo, who's the cinematographer, about how we want to lens this film, because we were very clear we didn't want to make a gritty film with a lot of handheld shots and dark tones and monochromatic colors. We wanted to have a lot of life in the film, and we wanted to shoot this whole film, this whole area from the point of view of, say, somebody like Mahinder, a working class gaze. So we didn't want it to be hurried. We wanted it to be a very stable kind of tripod and gimbal and that kind of a thing. We didn't want to look it for the film to look like it was shot chori se, or shot with a hidden camera or anything.
Okay. Was
And
it
that meant we had to change a lot of our style of how we do shooting. you
okay?
know this whole idea of we'll go with 50 people and park our vans and generators, that was done away with. We worked with a very small crew. We worked with a lot of direct engagement with the people, where consent was being negotiated in the basti. It wasn't like, okay, we've shot yesterday so we can shoot today also. Every day you go talk to people, you figure out. And that it was very critically planned shoot. It wasn't, okay, take the camera, do whatever you want.
So in a particular shot where Anjani go and seek jobs in the road at night after he loses the monkey rappler job, he just go walk in the road and go approach the people randomly and ask for the job. Was it planned or you just shorted it just like that?
So it's a mixture. So when he's talking to that printer guy, where there's a dialogue conversation, so that mic has been given to both. So we used to talk to those people. We used to figure out, this is what we're doing. Can we do this with you? And they would agree, and we would do that. And sometimes we would just have Shardul walking around in the roads and going and asking for jobs and things like that. See, also the thing is, post demonetization, this informal sector has been badly hit. So if you go into a place like Old Delhi or a lot of places in Delhi, there's a lot of casual labor which happens, and this is how people get jobs. They go around, they look, and so that depends on their skill set and what they can get. In our film, Anjani doesn't have any skills, so he didn't get any job. And this whole sequence was planned like this, you know of shooting in real spaces, shooting with real people, and just trying to get this desperation of a young man looking for a job in today's India.
Yeah, they do fix some color theme for the film to give that when you give some kind of idea you have to color it. So this is how my film going to be, you might have color theme or something, but in Bollywood that is not possible because every shot and most of the shot was shot in the public places and everything. How did you manage these things and all? When I saw the shot where he lost a job and after he knows that Mahendra was dead, he sit under the street light and he was drinking something. I guess the use that source light itself. Nothing, any external light has been used. Only the street light has used, and I thought you might have added any color grading in post. Is that real?
It's again a mixture.
Okay.
So a lot of see, we would identify places which have white lights and sodium vapor lights, and just see which all we can see. For us, the north block was given, so that red sandstone and that green is been given because of that area.
Okay.
And so when we come into the Basti, it's something we have to manage because that is all blue. The whole thing is blue. But again, like I'm saying, me and Somo were very clear, we wanted to have color in the film. We didn't want to have it one palette. We wanted to have a pink and yellow and green because I think it had to be vibrant like that color wise. And we just needed to see how things were working with each other, what kind of costumes we were given to people. And because it's like you said, it's very difficult to control an overall palette in a situation like this because you're shooting so much in real spaces,
Yeah.
and you don't have that kind of control. But you're always kind of working along with costumes, working along with lights, working along with how do I create graded colors in the frame, right?
Yeah.
It's the block is given, but within the frame, what all can I explore? And fundamental thing being that we wanted more color. We
Okay.
didn't want to have a monochromatic, less colorful film. Yeah.
So talking about the look of Anjani, I can see, I can connect with anybody in Chennai. Also, we have a lot of migrant workers. The look of Anjani was exactly like him. Like behind his look, how you worked with the small thing, with that nail and with that extremely violet t-shirt, and he put on the sweater thing and all. Very, the collar was a half turn or something else. Everything was very aesthetically has done. Yeah, even though his I mean even his clothes, hair and everything, how that actor has turned into Anjani, how did it happen?
I think like through everybody's hard work, primarily the actor's hard work itself, because he was moving around with Mahinder before the shoot and just trying to pick up nuances of what that class um, uh, entails, in terms of, see, there's this thing of we tend to think working class people are like this or like that, and we have a middle class notions about them. So I think that had to be broken in terms of costume and in terms of how the being of the characters was being created, so detailing like that nail and all became very important for us, of a person who's just come to a city. And what kind of, and he's a young person, right? So you he comes in with a mustache, and then you have a stubble, then you clean shave him. So these are the kind of things we always want to have in the film, physicalities which keep changing, so there's a scale, there's a sense of time passing in the film, because you have different kinds of look, you have different kind of thing. And even for Kumud, the nurse's character, the costumes became very important because you know uh, a person who's born and brought up in that area, and an aspirational young woman, the clothing is not very different from what you see in a middle class setup, but how they pull it off and what happens was the crucial thing. So it helped us a lot in terms of people who were doing the costume, Abhishek and Niharika, how they would source the costume, or how the actor would, make small adjustments to it, and how we would think, okay, will a green sweater go with a purple, t-shirt, and will it look too off? We wanted it to be organic. We didn't want it to be a caricature. So that is the crucial difference. because sometimes you want to make it a caricature, or ads do that a lot. Advertising, they want to make it because it's 30 seconds, so they want to have very stark things. We didn't want to have stark things, but we wanted to have a movement of a clean cut Anjani with a nice mustache coming from his home in Bihar. And by the end of it, a stubble, a dadi, and that madness had to come in. And that again, a lot of people talking about these things, again, not happening by mistake, but happening through a lot of consultation, dialogue, and discussion.
So you may have mentioned that you got the spark in kind of a news from the news which was published in 2014. I came to know. I just read the news yesterday. That article where Mahinder says that he was very he's very knowledgeable in the political issues and everything. He comment about it at that time itself. He mentioned about the political issues. Only people care about the animals, not the only the government care about the animal, not the people and all. So what is the travel with the Mahindra? How it used in useful to your script actually? Because the Mahindra is a main role where the spark has started, and he was traveling with you throughout the film, right? So what is the journey with the Mahindra? Just
Mahinder is our script consultant, a location scout consultant, is our monkey consultant, is our guide, philosopher, friend, everything. Mahinder was. Me and Shubham spent a lot of time with him. He was the first person that we met regarding this script, and he sort of took us around, helped us understand what this function, how this functions. We are still very much in touch with him, and we discuss things with him and all that. But to me, Mahinder became like the anchor of the film, and it's also his booming sound which makes the film, that E Baleu is a very unique sound that he can make. Nobody else can do that actually, and so it's also fictionalized element of what happens and what can happen in a script,
okay.
because it's also a fiction script. There's always this danger of filling it up with just only reality, and we are saying we will use the base as reality, but put our fiction story into this. That is the critical aspect, and that's why Mahinder also sort of helped.
That article he mentions that a particular people do this work as a monkey repeller. Is that true?
So I was saying there's this tradition of people and communities working with animals, and post independence, how slowly these jobs sort of got criminalized. So community of people called the Kalandars who've been working with, say, bears or monkeys, or those people who would bandar ka naach dikhana and all that. So slowly those have been criminalized, by because the Wildlife Security Act has come in, and a lot of other acts over the years, last 50 years. So communities have sort of lost their traditional jobs. So in this job also, there's a traditional community which has been working with langurs for a long time. And post 2014, when the langurs were banned to be used, this became a sort of contentious issue of uh, of who would do this job. The natural transition was to take people from this community, but the moment they put it under a contractual job, then it becomes any kind of hire and fire. Anybody can join this, and this leads to a little friction amongst people who've been doing this job since earlier, and towards new people who join in this job and all that.